Welcome everybody to another episode of Hidden Truth Seventh Day. Um, we are back, and we um we're going over Esther. We're in Esther 1. Um, let's just jump right into it. Let me give a little background, just a tidbit of background. They say that God is not spoken of at all in this book. Um, which I'm not gonna pretend like I was looking for that. There is an area where they pray and they fast. Um, but I don't know if the guy's name was mentioned at all in the book. I'm pretty sure it probably wasn't. They say it's not. Um, but this is just the biggest thing that I think that you could take away from the book of Esther is that this is most definitely a historical book, and it helps you understand. Which I probably could just wait for first chapter to say all of this, but it helps you clearly understand some of the things that Israel was subject to. So we get the stories of the things that they're subject to, and they had to deal with being under other kings. With that said, servant 144, jump us off, sir, please.
All right. So Esther chapter 1. So so this was in the days of, depending on which version that you read, they'll pronounce his name differently. But um in the King James version is pronounced his name Hazuris, who reigned from India to Ethiopia with 127 princes under him. He sat on the throne in Shushan the palace. In his third year of reign, he made a feast to all of his princes and his servants. Um, I believe, the power of Persia and Media. So the nobles and the princes of the provinces. So he showed the riches of his great kingdom for 180 days. And then afterwards was a feast for everyone in Shushan the palace, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. So the place was grand, of course, beautiful, upscale, because you get to see, for someone to have to show off their kingdom for 180 days, you know, that had to be a lot. Not only that, it was from India to Ethiopia, um, which we're talking about continents, not just countries, if I'm not mistaken. These were like continents. That's how much he was over. Okay. So they drank out of gold vessels, all being different, all different gold vessels, royal wine in abundance. So one of the seventh, so on the seventh day, the king sent for Queen Vashti to show the people and the princess her beauty. So the queen refuses to come, and the king was mad. He was very upset. So the king and his council discuss what should happen to Queen Vashti for not following the commandment of the king. One said this act could cause wives to despise or not listen to their husbands. So a decree was made, and it was written that Vashti cannot come before the king anymore. Her estate would be given to another woman who was better than her. So this way, all wives would keep respect for their husbands, both rich and poor. Okay, so what I pulled from the first chapter was basically that the Persia and the Media, the kingdom of the Persia and the Media was running. I'm pretty sure the world at this point. God had placed them over not only Israel, but I believe majority of the kingdoms, if not all of the other kingdoms at this point. And the king's riches in his kingdom was so great that he was able to show them for 180. He was able to show it off for 180 days to all of his princes and things and his servants and his nobles under him. And then afterwards, he held a feast. Okay. And then we see that Vashti basically did not want to show her beauty, whatever that meant. She didn't want to come and show her beauty off to the kingdom. So it came to the point that she was going to be replaced by someone that was better than her. Maybe that meant better looking. I'm not for sure. And but it was interesting. The reasoning here was interesting. I'm not going to lie, it was interesting. And it says so that wives would keep respect for her husbands, for their husbands, both rich and poor, because the king and the council did not want everyone to see that he keeps a wife who did not follow his commandment, and they thought that it could that this act could affect other wives and husbands. It could affect other marriages, and that's all I have for one.
Um, this is the first feminist act ever. Um, Woman said, "Hey, I am not going to submit to my husband's request." She just forgot that her husband was like the king of everything, and he was stunting. Like you can't, you can't sit back and think that I'm not sure what this young lady was thinking. This is a bad move on her part. Uh, you can't. I don't understand. This was a non-understandable moment. The only thing I can say to make this moment understandable is God was moving in this woman's heart so he can move her out the way. Um, that's the only thing that I can make this to make this moment make sense. You're a queen. If the king, everybody's subject to the king. Um, Nobody's not subject to the king. But I do agree with the sentiment. The Bible talks about a little leaven leavening the whole lump. I think the church should take heed to this, because I'm not sure the church believes this. I always talk about like head coverings and how head coverings really is about honoring what God had designed us to be. Men not covering their head is because of how God designed you to be. Women covering their head is because of God how designed you to be. And it's either an honorable or dishonorable thing, whether you do it when you go to God in prayer. That's from God's point of view. That's from God's thing. And we dismiss God's point of view because it's not ours, right? Because whether a woman cover her head or don't cover her head don't mean much to me. But if I'm concerned about how God views a thing, whom is my king? You're not only going to come when he call you, you're going to come the way that pleases him. The way, because if he sees something that's unhonorable, you should check that. And if he sees something that's honorable, you should present that. That should be a no brainer for us. But we have this thought process that we're equal to God, and that's what I think is really being displayed here. She feels like her decision is equal to her husband's decision, and it's not equal. The Bible does not support equality between men and women. The way you're created clearly shows that. Even if you try to dismiss the Bible and say, "Oh, it's a misogynistic book for men, and men controlled it, men wrote it, and of course they wrote it in a way to benefit them." Who wrote your body? Who wrote the design of your body? If you look at the design of your body, it's in a way that benefits men. and you and like, for believers, that shouldn't be a shocker because it's in the Bible. The Bible says that women were made for men and men were not made for women. So that's a one-way thing. And it's very evident in how we were created. I say it, I'm gonna say it, just so it's said again. The difference between men and women is sex. Sex starts when men get up. It's over when men are done. Uh, Intercourse feels good, but it's for creating. In order for you to create a child, a man has to finish. A woman does not. So a woman carries all of the burden of the intercourse and possibly none of the pleasure. Are you saying that God created us in that fashion and things are not kind of the one way? It's in our body structure that it's the one way. And so um the Bible tells women to submit to men for a reason. None of this stuff is without reason. And the reason has nothing to do with the man. The reason has nothing to do with the woman. The reason has everything to do with God. He created us and he wants to see us function in the way that he created us because it reflects him. And we continuously want to make this about each other. And so men and women are fighting each other, trying to see who's gonna win, and both of you will lose because you're fighting for the conquest of the wrong thing. Men shouldn't fight women, so men can be on top. You should go against anything a woman is saying that's against God, so God can be on top. God is supposed to be edified. God is supposed to be glorified. And when men shut women down like they shut her down, they put her out of her position because it is very true. It's the same thing with feminism. It's not good for anyone in the land that women don't submit to their husbands. You look at it like, oh, it's bad for women. No, it's good for women too. It's good for women that the women submit to their husbands. It's good for children that women submit to their husband. It's good for the man. It's good for everybody that women submit to. If you're doing the role, you're playing the role that pleases God. God responds because we keep making it about us. When you make it about God, it becomes a very different dynamic. And so, although these are Persians, they do understand the order that God has structured. And it is very proper for them to put this young lady out of her position if she refuses to submit to the position. It's like this: if you go to a job and you get hired for a job, and please don't tell me that marriage is not like being hired for a job, because it really is. It really is. It's a position that you must fulfill the role of the position, both husband and wife. The Bible says the position of the husband is to love his wife like Christ loved the church, you know, willing to die for her, dealing with her according to knowledge, you see, or his prayers will be hindered. These are the qualifications of the position of husband. Wives, submit to the husband, obey him. These are the qualifications of the submission to the wife, building the home and not tearing it down. These are the qualifications of the role. And so when you get hired for a position and you then refuse to fulfill the job of the position, well, you might get dismissed. Now, under the New Testament, we're walking under the Spirit, and so dismissal is extremely harder. But you shouldn't be testing that. If you're walking in the Spirit, you're not going to be in a position where you're going to uh, even be testing uh, uh, not walking in your role. You would just submit to the Spirit and walk in your role. But yeah, Vashti, like I said, the only other thing I could is God led her to do that, just so she could be moved out of the way for what's going to happen next. Other than that, this was a bad look. Like Server 144 says, he has all of these people around, and the most embarrassing thing that you could ever have as a man is a wife that won't listen to you. You done invited everybody over. They looking at how nice your place is. They looking at how hard you work to build this place up, the wisdom that you displayed to have all of these different things, and you throwing a big party, and your wife won't even make you a plate. Now you doing all of these things that would make you an honorable person in the eyes of everybody in the room, but the one person that matters don't want to honor you. The one person that matters the most don't want to honor you. Everybody else in the room got a level of respect for the king that if he requested them to do something, they would do it. But the wife has now put herself in a position above the king. And what can you honestly learn from this? This is what we do to God. This is exactly what we do to God. God has given us everything. He has blessed us. He gives us breath. He gives us life. He gives us the energy to perform, to move. He gives us grace in having jobs and being able to make money and do all of these different things. But then when he calls on us to come, we like, I don't feel like coming around. I don't feel like he called on you to testify. You can't testify. You're like, nah, I don't got time for that. I got this over here to do. And this is the interesting thing. The chapter actually reflects one of the parables that Jesus tell um, in the New Testament. He talks about him getting everything ready for a banquet, and he invites the people who's supposed to be there to come, and they got something better to do. So what does he do? He dismisses all the people who got something better to do, and he gets someone else to fulfill the seats. And the very interesting thing is that's what happened to Vashti. She gets completely dismissed out of her position because it is true. It would make all women feel like, oh, I want to be like Vashti. I want to rebel against my man like Vashti. I want to stand because this is what we have today in the feminist movement. Women wanting to be equal to men. And the only way a woman can be equal to men is to bring the men down, to bring the standards of a man down and make a man get it, make a man get in touch with his feminine side, which means he can't be masculine. He got to get soft. He got to get all emotional. An emotional man is a sad thing. And I'm not saying that men don't have an emotion. Men clearly have emotions, but if a man is led by his emotions, it's not a good thing. The strength of a man, the power of a man under an emotional state can be extremely destructive. You want men to think logically. You want men to consider. You do not want men to be carelessly, emotionally making decisions because he will blow this world up. Um, those men have to be locked up and contained because they're so dangerous. So dangerous. Um, and I didn't think I had that much to say about this chapter. Let's go right into chapter two. Go ahead, sir. 144.
All right. So chapter 2. All right. So beautiful virgins were sought out to come and compete or to please the king the most uh in efforts to replace Queen Vashti. Esther happened to be one of the virgins. Mordecai, which was a Benjamite, she was the cousin to him, and he had taken her as a daughter due to her parents passing. So she immediately finds favor with the king, and she is treated nicely. There was a purification process that took 12 months of cleansing before the woman got to go in the king, got to go into King uh, Ahasuerus. All right, so chapter 12 talks about purification. No, I'm sorry. Verse 12 talks about the purification process. It says, now when every maid's turn was come to go in to King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of woman, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women. So after this, the woman will come and see the king, then leave. They will come, I believe, for a day or an evening, and they will leave the next day. So Esther got her turn and found favor. She was taken into the king's house the 10th month, 7th year of his reign. The king loved her more than the others, and she became queen. So the king threw another feast and was happy. And Mordecai, Esther's, which of course was Esther's kin, sat at the king's gate. Two of the king's servants wanted to lay hands on him. Mordecai tells the Esther, who tells the king, and the two men are hung. Okay, so what I pulled from this chapter, this purification process was very interesting to me. The fact that they even noted that there was a purification process before the women went in and to see the king. And I believe we actually probably could pull a few things here from the purification process. We understand that us and when we are saved, when we come to the truth and in the truth of the gospel, and in being saved and filled with the Spirit and repenting, that we go through a purification process. Um, I believe until death. I mean, you could argue until death, but we go into a purification process until we really have a decent foundation enough. Uh, I'm not sure to call ourselves saved or to really help the kingdom of God as well. But even after that, we're still going through a purification process until death. We're going into perfection until death to go until we can go to see the king. So I definitely pulled that out. And that was very interesting that it was 12 months and that it noted about different oils and different smells and cleaning things of that nature so that the women were suitable, I'm guessing suitable or pleasurable for the king before they would even go see him. So that was very interesting there. And then of course that in this empire, basically a child of Israel, which we could call Esther, what found favor with the king. And so we understand that she will be the queen and she will have some impact to an extent in favor with the king. And so God here does not dismiss his children, but even finds a way, even while they are subject to the Persian, the Medes, or the Median, Persian Median Empire, under their rule, he still puts one of his children uh, in a place of power, in a place of impact, in a place of being recognized, things of that nature as well. So those two things definitely stood out for me.
So yeah, um, it's a lot, man. It's an interesting thing that there's a saying. They have the saying that a king can take the lowest girl in the land and make her the highest woman in the land. They say, but a queen can't do that, um, which is interesting because you marry a queen, you can't be king. But if you marry a king, you can be queen. Um, um, which that just is what it is. Uh, so yeah, um, they go throughout and they're looking for all of these different women. They get all the beautiful women of the land, and I guess this is the easiest way to date in the universe. Uh, just snatching chicks up. um, but when you are king, I guess these are the perks of being king. You don't have to court. You don't have to court a chick. You just snatch her up. Um, and he snatch up a whole group of chicks. This is the craziest version of Tinder. Um, but they go through a whole a ritual washing, and one of the things that you can most definitely, without a doubt, learn from this whole story is the process that one must go through before presenting yourself to a king. You see this also um, in Joseph. Joseph actually had to be watched. Now he didn't have to do it for 12 months because I don't think he was getting that close to the king. The way these young ladies are. Um, but he most definitely had to go through a purification process, a washing process before he was presented before the king. And as 7144 points out, we go through a purification process. You even see this in Israel. Before the priests went into the presence of God, they had to wash first. And so you see, this is a common practice when uh, visiting a king or when being in the presence of the king. So some people want to dismiss baptism, and I think that's a sad thing that I even have to bring that up. Baptism should not be dismissed in any way, form, or fashion. The weakest argument that I ever hear about baptism, which people continuously bring it up like it's an actual solid argument, is the thief on the cross. and nobody knows whether that guy was baptized or not. We make a conversation out of something that is not even known in the scripture. The scriptures don't tell you that the thief on the cross was not baptized. The scriptures don't tell you that he was baptized. But for some strange reason, everyone assumes that the thief on the cross wasn't baptized. Why? Because he was a thief on the cross? Like baptism clearly doesn't stop you from sinning. So just because he got baptized, he number one, he could be paying for a sin that he did before he got baptized. But let's pretend it's after he got baptized. Baptism don't stop you from sinning. Like he could have got dunked in the water and got up and stole some junk right after that. Like I don't know why you think that because he's on the cross, it's impossible for him to have had been baptized. But people use that argument. What about the thief on the cross? Like bad example. How about that junk? How about that's a horrible example? But it's like when you I think people get distracted sometimes. They get distracted on the sense that a thing maybe because we don't really read the Bible. I don't really know. But I think the thief of the cross is the worst argument in the universe. But I'm supposed to be talking about Esther. Um so the purification process, that's how I got to the thief of the cross. Help us all, Father. There's a purification process for us to um have access to God, have access to the throne of grace. Baptism is without a doubt a part of that process. Being born again of water and spirit is most definitely a part of that process for us in our King, to be in the presence of our King. Um, what you see, Jesus even says, you cannot see or enter the kingdom without these things, right? And so you see this process, a 12-month process to be in, they can't see into his presence without going through this 12-month process, mainly because these women, they are considered nasty and things of that sort because um, they, in a lot of cases, if you just snatching up women, these women are farmers. They're dirty. They're not used to the prestige of being in the kingdom, which the king's wife has to be clean and smelling like, lilacs and lilies and lavender all day long. And I just picked like all L um, flowers on accident, but whatever. Uh, so that's what she's supposed to present because when she gets in his presence, he wants to be pleased the whole time. He don't want nothing throwing his thought process off. Um, and so if she smells funny, that's gonna throw him off. You know what I'm saying? She can't just be pleasing to the eyes. She has to be pleasing to the nose and everything. And so they send her through those processes because in a lot of cases, some of that smell that get in poor people um, is hard to get out. And so they go through the 12 months process of getting the oil baths and conditioning their skin. That's another thing, condition the skin, because you're dealing with a woman who has been working the field or things. When she got rough hands, she might be pretty as all get out, but she got hands like a sailor. And so the whole process is conditioning their skin and getting everything ready as to where she is feminized. She is soft to the touch. She is good to the smell. She visually looks good. Everything about this interaction has to be nice because you're going before the king and a very prosperous king at that. Because keep in mind, in one, he's throwing this big banquet for everybody in the world or in his world. Um, and so Esther gets to, and it also is showing them culture, it's showing women uh, how to clean themselves and all of this stuff. Because you got to keep in mind, like I say, the whole class thing is a big, huge thing at this point. And it's a completely different class of woman that's presented before the king than there is that is like normal everyday women. And so there's a lot of stuff that about cleaning themselves and washing themselves and perfumes and jewelry that a lot of these women probably have no idea of because he's not picking women from royalty. He's picking women. They just say they just rounded up any chick that was pretty. And so it's a lot of things that they have to learn about their bodies and about how to clean up and things of that sort. So they're going through this whole thing, and then it's how to be a wife, which is something that's supposed to be taught in the church. How to be a wife, how to please a man, what you can do, what you can't do. What are the different laws? They even learning laws in this 12 months period. How, when can you go before the king? When you can't go before the king? How do you sit down? How do you eat? All of these different things, all the proper etiquettes that they may not have been privy to prior to being in this situation. In order for you to be queen, you have to live up to the standard. So, what does that link to? To me, that links to study to show yourself approved. Jesus washing his bride with the word. Um, that links to those scriptures. How do we get cleaned up and be in the presence of God? Christ is washing us with the word so that we can be being washed with his blood, so we could go before God without spot or wrinkle. So we're going through this period just like they went through a period of washing, so we can be properly presented before God. So all of those things are takeaways to me from chapter dose. Let's get right into three.
All right. Chapter 3. So later, the king places Haman, the Agagite, above other princes. The servants reverence Haman, but not Mordecai. So the servants asked Mordecai why he went against the king's commandments. When Haman saw Mordecai didn't bow to him, he was mad. So after Haman found out who Mordecai's people were, Haman wanted to kill all the Jews, not just Mordecai. So Haman convinces the king that a certain group of people follow different customs, and it was in the king's best interest not to tolerate them, but to destroy them. And it's to the point that Haman even wants to pay the king to assist in destroying these people, which were the Jews. So the king tells him to do with the Jews or the certain people, the certain group of people as he pleases, and he also tells him to keep his money. So a decree was sent out to the governors, the rulers, etc., in writing and sealed to kill, destroy, etc., all the Jews. Yeah. So yeah. So we clearly just see that in the former chapter that Mordecai, who was a Jew, helped save possibly the life of the king, and he is not noticed at this point. And Haman, the Agagite, was placed in a position that was probably second to the king, or he was at least above all of the other princes, which we understand. I believe it was 127 of them, if I'm not mistaken. And so the servants of the land reverence Haman as he was put in this high position by the king, but not Mordecai, right? And so Haman finds out, he sees that Mordecai's not bowing to him, whatever, and he wants to kill not only him, but all of the Jews, right? So he comes up with this plan, which works, and he gets a decree sent out to all around all of the land, to all of the governors, rulers, etc., and writing and sealed that he can basically destroy and kill all of the Jews. So I'm not sure why this put me in the thought process of uh what happened when what I forgot the guy's name. Well, Hitler. Yeah, it made me think about Hitler for some reason. Yeah, but anyways, he has the go ahead and do this. So the king gives him the decree. Haman, the second guy in charge, possibly, you know, to go ahead and destroy all of these people. So yeah, that's all I have for 3.
Okay, okay. Three. Now we get the plot. Now we get to see how crazy the story gets. It's an interesting thing. You watch the movie sometimes, and the movie don't necessarily line up with what the Bible says. Maybe a small thing. Maybe it's not. I'm not sure. But you know what they say. The Bible says about small things. You gotta watch out for them. You gotta watch out for the small stuff. Um, um. So we get Mr. Haman in the picture. And Haman ends up with a beef with a Jew, Mr. Mordecai, right? And the most interesting thing, man, this dude could have just had a beef with Mordecai and left everybody else alone. But he decides, hey man, I can't just take Mordecai out the game. I gotta take his whole generation out the game. This is a different type of hate, man. Like, you could have just let this dude alone, or he could have just got at the dude. He could have just took his family out or something. I don't like this dude's like, nah, man. Everybody who is what he is got to go. So he develops a favor in the kingdom to where he moves up the ranks as a prince um to a higher rank than all the other princes. So he's evidently doing a lot of things that pleases this king, right? So he is a high level prince that is now has the ear of the king. He's always in his presence. And so he's like he convinces the king without a lot of evidence, right? That um it's in his best interest to drop these people. And so he moves forward with this whole thought process, and the king doesn't even really know, which is the reason why I'm like, yo, this is kind of weird, but God is probably trying to continuously draw Israel to remembering him. One of the things that we notice throughout the scriptures, and this is the reason why I think it's just so God's wrath is so relevant because it brings us to our knees. It brings us to recognize him in a way that he should always be recognized. And you see that kind of brewing here, right? Because you can sit back and say, "Well, what's the purpose of this?" But if Israel is getting comfortable where they are, they'll eventually forget God. And God is like, "Yo, regardless of where you are, you can never forget me. I'm still the one who created all things. I'm not gonna let my creation forget me, especially not the ones who I've chosen to carry my name. Not letting you forget me. I will do things to make sure you remember my name." Um, and so this is happening. Um, he out of nowhere learns to despise a Jew, and instead of wanting to kill him, wants to take out the whole thing. You gotta say that this is a wrath thing, where God is trying to get Israel to remember who He is and come to a place of humility. It happens all through the Bible. Um, if you do not humble yourself, you're gonna wish you would have. um, and so this guy, he can't even enjoy his success because he is full of hatred toward a Jew who is really, in all honesty, to a degree, he's standing on something. I'm not sure whether he's standing on the principles of God or not. I would love to think that he is, but it doesn't necessarily say that he's standing on the principles of God. But he is standing on something that is conflicting with. It even says the king's rule. Is why do you? And I think what the thought process is, if which is this is a true thought process. I'm not against this thought process. If you go against a prince, if you don't bow down to a prince that the king set up as prince, you are going against his authority by not honoring that prince. So it's the same thing as if you work at a job and you get a manager and they tell you, hey, yo, this is the guy who manages over you, and you don't respect and follow the orders that that manager gives you, you're not just disrespecting that manager, but you're disrespecting the company who put that manager in the position. You're saying that I don't have to regard the company's decision for you to uh, give me instructions. I don't have to regard that. So you're disrespecting the whole company, which is what happens in this case. If you're not bowing down to the prince whom the king put in place, then you're not listening, adhering to the king's commands. So that's why they question him on that. Um, yeah, that is pretty much all I have for this segment. It most definitely puts my man in a rage to the point where he's trying to kill everybody. But yeah, let's go right into four.
Okay. So Mordecai hears all that had been done. He puts on sackcloth and ashes and cries out with a loud cry. He even comes to the king's gate. No one could enter the king's gate with sackcloth and ashes. So in every province, Jews were fasting, weeping, and wailing, many in sackcloth and ashes. Esther tries to get Mordecai to put clothes on, but he refuses to. So Esther has an eunuch to find out what was troubling Mordecai. So the eunuch gives her a full report. So Esther tries to convince Mordecai to be careful, not to get killed. Mordecai convinces Esther that she is not safe being a Jew. So Esther comes up with a plan to fast for 3 days. And she no. So she comes up with a plan for Mordecai to fast for her for 3 days, and she would do the same. So they both would fast for 3 days. Then she would go to the king, and if she died, she would just die, pretty much. Okay. So, well, although God is not mentioned here, because it was definitely that stood out to me too. That I mean, it didn't necessarily mention God here, but they are putting on sackcloths and ashes. First, Mordecai, that's his first response, which is very interesting. Very interesting. We definitely see throughout the Bible that people that humble themselves and their reaction is to console God, especially in fasting and prayer. God usually responds to them in a favorable outcome. We definitely see that, and that principle is definitely, I believe, taught here. I I cannot think of them being Jews. At least they know enough, or they have kept enough of the tradition. Because you also see it talks about other Jews that were spread out in other provinces were also fasting and crying out to God with and going in sackcloth and ashes. So I'm pretty sure they were crying out to God here, and they were fasting to God so that they would not be slaughtered. That's about the only thing I can come up with here. In which and then in all when in doubt or in worry, we definitely need to fast and cry out to God. Whenever in doubt or in worry, we definitely need to fast. We should be fasting and crying out to God. And I say you never can go wrong with this act of discipline with God towards God. But it definitely is interesting here that it doesn't necessarily mention God. Like Mordecai in his fasting and his going in sackcloth and ashes, and then he was crying out, but it doesn't say to God. So that was interesting. And it doesn't say neither of the other Jews that were fasting and weeping and wailing, and many of them were in sackcloth and ashes, but it doesn't say that they were necessarily weeping and crying out to God neither. So that was interesting. And then, of course, we see Esther's response here too, as well. Once she's convinced by Mordecai that, hey, just because you are the wife, or you basically a piece of property, you a pretty piece of property. You're not safe. because you are a Jew also, so you could possibly be killed as well. But her response is to fast for 3 days. That they both fast for 3 days, and then she will go and present something to the king and ask the king basically. And if she died, she just died. So that's very interesting thought process here. Uh, Definitely good takeaways from both Mordecai and Esther though in this chapter. That's all I have for four.
Yeah, man, yeah, it is a very strange interaction. God's name not mentioned not once. They're crying out, we don't know to whom. We can assume to God. We especially because of the outcome, right? Especially because of the outcome, you assume they're crying out to God. You assume that they're praying to God. Um, that is interesting that it doesn't speak of it at all. Um, you could take that however you want to, especially like I said, because of the outcome, it makes you feel like yeah, they was crying out to God and things of that sort. Hiding their heritage, hiding the fact that she's a Jew. He did threaten her, let her know. He put a thought in her head that with the hopes of persuading her decision making, to protect her people, even with her own life. Um, so he most definitely put a strong thought in her head concerning that because he says he said something that requires to me um faith to say it. I mean, I guess you could probably say it without faith, but it, most definitely without a doubt a specific level of confidence. He says that help is gonna we're gonna get helped out of the situation. We can do it with you or we can do it without you. So, but if we do it without you, you're gonna die. Do not think you can bag out of this situation, not help us out, and you still gonna live. So he puts a very interesting threat on her life. So she's just like, yo, if I go before him, I could possibly die. But this dude is threatening me, saying if I don't go before him, I'm most definitely going to die. And so, very interesting threat. If we look at the thought process of loving a person and being kind to a person, would you say that to a person if you're loving and kinding? I'm not sure, especially under the definition that we have of being loving kind. I'm not sure that's the conversation you have with somebody you love and you're trying to be kind to. That seems like more of a threatening conversation that you're putting them in a hard spot so they can do whatever the heck you want to. Seems like manipulation. But all in the same, sometimes people need different motivation in order to execute what needs to be done. And that's one of the things that I think has to be considered when engaging with each other. Knowing the proper motivation that a person needs to handle what needs to be done is vital. And I think the only way you could really honestly know that is to check in with God. Find out what God would have you say to people. It might seem strange, it might sound strange, but if it's effective, then it's most definitely without a doubt from God. Um, and so you can't put it in a box and you can't, um, it's a difficult thing to judge. When we talk about in James, it says, don't judge it. Uh, And I know nowadays, for especially believers, that's a very difficult thing because we want to judge everything because we think we really know God. We think we got the monopoly on God. Every denomination think they got the monopoly on God. Everybody think that they really truly know Him, and they're very aware of what He wants and what He don't want, what He like and what He don't like. And I don't even know how they got that. You read this Bible, and it's very clear that that is not very easily possible to figure out. God has to reveal what He wants, so you really don't know it. And we can pretend like we know, but we have no idea. Um, so uh, yeah, you see that here with Esther. She gets into the fasting with the other Jews, and she's about to present herself to the king, um, putting her life on the line. Um, you can't get so caught up in luxury that you're not willing to answer the call of God. I don't care who you are, what position you have. You cannot get yourself so caught up in luxury. that you're not willing to answer the call of God whenever it happens in your life. That's all I have for Esther 4. Let's go right into 5.
All right, five. So on the third day, Esther puts on her royal apparel. The king sees her by the inner court next to his throne, and he is pleased. So the king asked her what she wanted. Uh, he went on to even say that he would give her. It was worded differently in the two different translations that I read. In one translation, it said that he would give her half of the kingdom. Now I didn't know if that whatever. And then another translation, it said that it shall be even given thee to half of the kingdom, which could mean the same thing. I don't know exactly what that means. It shall be given. It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom. But at any rate, he was ready to give her what she wanted. Is what it sounded like. So Esther requests the king to attend a banquet that she prepared for the king and for Haman. All right. So the king agrees to come and asks her, "What is thy petition? It will be granted." All right. So as Esther wants to ask her request at the banquet, so she will prepare the banquet the next day. So Haman. But there's a banquet that's going on this day as well. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, yeah, I believe there's a banquet that's going on this day as well. All right, in which Haman attends this banquet. So he leaves happy, and he sees Mordecai, and he gets upset. He does nothing. He goes home and he tells his friends and his wife of his favor with the king, but how none of the favor matters if Mordecai is alive. So his wife and friends tell him to have uh it says a gallows built and ask the king for Mordecai to be hung. So Haman caused the gallows to be built. All right. So yeah. So we see here that on the third day, Esther goes, she puts on her royal apparel. She asked the king. No, the king actually addresses her. He sees her, he's pleased, he addressed her. Hey, like, what do you want? I would even give this to you up to half of the kingdom, right? And she basically tells him, "Hey, I want to have a banquet tomorrow for you and Hammond, and I'll make my request there." Okay. So, but at the current banquet, like I said, Hammond was there. He leaves. He leaves happy, but he sees Mordecai and he gets upset. He goes home. He basically tells his wife and his friends of all of the favor that he has with the king, but none of it matters if Mordecai is alive. And then he goes on to make gallows, whatever that is. He has the gallows to be built so that more and so because he wants to ask the king to go ahead and hang Mordecai from these gallows. Yep. So here, I mean, the main thing that I pulled out is the fact that Esther is definitely seen by the king, and the king is ready to grant her request. So, she found favor. She found favor with the king, and then of course, men are physically stimulated, and yeah, that's pretty much. I mean, it goes to the point where he's talking about your request. I'll give you your request, even up to I want to make sure I'm reading it right, but it says, "It shall be, what wilt thou, Queen Esther? What is thy request? It shall be even given thee to half of the kingdom." Now, once, and this man is not just some average guy with a few things. You know what I mean? This man is like, uh, he's not Solomon rich, but it took 180 days to show off his kingdom. He's basically saying up to 90 of those days, I'm gonna grant you your request. It took me worth of stuff or whatever you about to ask for. So she really had favor. That's all I have for five.
Yeah, she had to be gorgeous. She had to be very pleasing, not just outwardly, but inwardly. Like her whole demeanor might have just made him feel some kind of way, like how she carried herself or how she took care of him. The thing of it is they hadn't seen each other in a month, I believe. And so there's several things you could look if you try to line up the Vashti situation with the Esther situation. There's several things you could take away from the two situations, right? Number one, Vashti, like I say, the mindset of the king concerning the two different situations that would make him um yield the scepter to her, right? The mindset of the king in the situation with Vashti, he calls Vashti, she won't come, right? This chick don't want to be in his presence when at command. You look at Esther, his mindset's like, oh snap, this chick is even coming when I ain't even called yet. You know what I'm saying? Like she's just like it's several things you could say could be in the mindset of the king that he seems to be extremely pleased with her. So you could say, oh yo, she probably know about how Vashti got kicked out. And so she's just like, you know what? I know he like his lady being around when the banquet is going down. Let me be in there to make sure that I fulfill his wish before he even shoot out a command. I know how it's gonna go down. He gonna want people to see my beauty. You see what I'm saying? So he could possibly be thinking of it that way because if you watch the movie make you feel like he was mad about this. But if you see what's in the scriptures, he seems to be fairly pleased um, that she is presenting herself even without permission, even without being called. And I think if you look at the Vashti situation, it'll help you see his possible mind concerning this situation is this lady wants to make sure I'm pleased to the point where she'll come to the banquet before everybody, showing off her beauty before I even request it. Unlike Vashti, who refused to come. So I think that's the reason why you have such a happy response or excited response. Um, like, hey yo, whatever you want, baby. Because you, for the way that you're responding, you should be honored. Um, the way Vasti responded, that's no bueno. But you can't get enough of me. You want to be in my presence. I ain't even called her yet. You can kind of hype yourself up in front of your friends when your woman responding like that. Like you see, I ain't even called her, bro. She can't get enough of me, man. Let me go be with her real quick, y'all. Y'all know how it is. Y'all know how it is when you got it like that. They can't get enough of you. Not like the Vashti junk where she just like, nah, I don't like you. Ooh, I'm not coming. So it's a lot in the two scenarios. You can see it's a big difference in the responses. Um, then she goes to butter him up some more, right? Instead of making these different requests on questioning his judgment in front of everybody, she's like, "Yo, baby, I know your favorite meal. I know how you like to sit back and relax. Let me get you in the most relaxed state possible. You and your homie, because I know that's your ace. You know what I'm saying? Let me get you in a relaxed state possible. Then I'm gonna make my request to you. Let me give to you before I ask you for anything. Let me satisfy you before I ask you for a thing. Come to this banquet that I got for you. Let me honor you the way you should be honored. Let me cater to you the way you should be catered to before I ask you for anything. You see, um, um, very wise, very wise. I think a lot of women could read this and learn how to engage your husband from how Esther is engaging the king. Um, very wise, I would say personally that this is a good look and it's a real good move for her um, to get what she wants out of the king. And in a lot of cases, I think women should. There are people in the Bible that I feel like are highlighted for the wrong reasons. I feel like there are women in the Bible who are not highlighted at all. Abigail, David's second wife, she should really be highlighted and how she moved. But those women don't get highlighted at all. Um, but they should be. It's another lady in Judges, very wise woman. Is it Judges? No, no, no. That's not Judges. That's in the Kings. Very wise woman who orchestrates peace between David's men and a guy who kind of who rebels. She orchestrates peace between the city and them. She should be highlighted in the Bible, but you don't hear people talking about her. It's a lot of women I feel like that should be highlighting how they move, the different ways that they engaged men, the different ways that they respected men, they honored men, and they got men to respond in the way they wanted them to respond, based upon how they engaged them, and how they catered to their hearts, catered to their minds, catered to their positions. I think women should really study those things, especially Sarah, because the Bible even comments that you should be studying how Sarah dealt with Abraham, calling him Lord. Um, but that is all for today. That is all the time that we have for today. Um, as I say, uh, pray for me, pray for the channel, pray for everybody you see on the channel, and as we come to know and understand who you are, we will be praying for you. The Lord bless you and keep you.